everyone, good afternoon or good morning, I guess, depending where you are. Still morning here. Okay, so just real quick, because I'm planning on doing the Fed stream instead, so 68.58 is really the big overhead. We did trigger this overnight, but kind of stalled there. We already know that 68.71, 72 is kind of the bigger range that we're looking at achieving. Since they did trigger that overnight but then didn't clear it, we definitely have an odd of revisiting. And we also did trigger our 60, I don't have all my levels marked in here, but we did trigger our 68.92 to start the week, so this could also get us an odd of potentially getting there. I already went through so many of the dynamics that are heading into today, which I'm not going to sit here and recover over and over and over again, but the goal right now is we needed to break either end. So whether it was breaking 683375, which puts us at a risk of getting back to 22, like this area here, 2224. But this is enough to technically get it to come back and retest the upside, with 6858 being the current overhead here around this 5857 area. So far they're kind of stalling just a little bit. So I wanted to see if mid-session can finally break this 57 to 58. It's very important that they break it between here and just before 1 o'clock. Sorry. Because then otherwise the odds of us actually capturing range during that period heavily decrease. Okay, so this is exactly what we want to see ahead of 1. Can someone document this, please? And I did note that earlier, that it's pretty important that they do this. Okay, we do not want to overlap. So we want to have some odds of getting a 6858 break between 12 and 1 o'clock. So they're for sure delaying or reducing range. But at this point, at least they're giving the odds of getting the 6852 during this hour, or 6858. So considering all we got was 6858 during this hour and no breaks to like 7-1, they're probably going to keep this more in like those mid ranges that we talked about. So, and it's not much reduction during this period, but even those 9 points, are you guys paying attention? They could have gotten us breaks already to like 6-8. Do you see what I'm saying? So we'll see how much range we get here, but they definitely reduced it a little bit by taking it back to the channel during this period. Hitting 5-8 though is enough to keep us durational now from 1 to 2. But I feel like, remember how I was saying that this is more mid-range, which is like, oh, what did I say? It's so hard to explain in text. These are mid-range calculations, meaning, where did it go? Let's see if I can find it. I typed so goddamn much that I can't even find them. This, like, it's like whatever the offset is. It was like 62, 68, maybe like, so 68 has, I said they're doing mid-range, which means that that's kind of shitty because it means that they're probably not going to give us 7-1 during this hour. They'll probably take out 5859, but then they might stall 6-4, 6-5, 6-6, 6-7. Okay, so far that seems to be the case, and they're definitely trading around like mid-range odds. Yeah, it's kind of like breaking either just above or just beneath. I don't really know how to explain it other than that. So like, and that's because of these crossovers. Like even this is a zone crossover. Do you see this? This is the 3 points. You see how they breached 3 points here? That's the same thing that I was talking about this morning. Do you see what I'm saying? 3 points here. Okay. Same with here. From like the the channel. Do you see it? off our 3375. Okay, same with here, because they couldn't get that break of like 5859. Same with here when they stalled 5.2. That's why they kept stalling around like 5.5. Do you see what I'm saying? And that could be the exact same thing here, which is maybe why they could stall closer to 60.75. Let's just mark these. I didn't actually measure them, but it looks like the area is 60.75. That's, if we measure off where they actually had stalled, it's closer to like 5.950. So at least they got breaks of 5.950. That means that they could easily come back and break this area here. Do you guys understand what I'm saying when I say mid-range though? Hopefully. Okay. Or in theory, you can also just think of it as being like just above or just below. So the next time they breach, it should start building and sustaining better structure above 5.1, 5.2, because that would be like sustaining the means this time. Because this hour between 1 and 2, okay? What time is it? 1? Between 1 and 2. Do we want to revisit the channel between 1 and 2 p.m.? Well, probably not. Okay. This is another reason why they could maybe come back to like this range in here. So I feel like this hour is so important that they try their best to avoid coming back into the channel. Okay, and like I said, I feel like if they don't get us ranges to 7.1 between 12 and 1 and all they get us is like 5.8 and like 60, 61, then this period probably has some reductions in play. Even looking at here, like most of these hourly lots, like I said, they were ranging between 20, 22, 17 points. This is the first increase that we've had. Overall highs to lows on the session hour, 29 points. So do you also see how that is another way of looking at this from like the base theory approach? Are you guys paying attention? Try paying attention, please, because this is, I'm only going to explain it once and then I'm going to log off until Fed session. Another easier way to maybe interpret this instead of like looking at it from like the multi ranges is the reductions here could be what's stopping us from getting like 32, 33 point breaks. Do you see what I'm saying? Off those lows. Okay? Because kind of like once you offset this at 6.4, 6.86475, then you have better odds of breaking. Also, what is 6.86475 or 6.865? So we know from lows right now that's a 34 point break. But with base theory, what is that? What's that area? So it's pretty interesting that that's the 34 points from lows today. What's this area here? And from this higher low at 6.6. All 28 of you guys don't know what that 6.864 or 6.6 is? See, these are core ranges. Hello guys, come on. What is 6865, 6866? If you guys are gonna do one of those things where like no one answers any questions, then I'm just gonna sit here quietly and just share my screen. There's no point. Because at that point I'm just talking to myself. This is interesting too, that if they come back above the lows, like over 66 points, then they would be breaking weekly highs to 9.6 and our top of the zone at 9.9. You guys don't know what 6865, 6864 is? Come on. That's not a coincidence that that 34-point range is aligning there, because that 6465 area is the top of the means. Okay? What happens if you end up stalling there, like in general? There's two things that you could either do. You can either break and continue, or you can have a rejection in that area there. So today's 34-point range off lows is the top of the means. That's pretty interesting that it's around the 6465 area. And then if they give full range, it would be right back to weekly highs and potentially getting back to 68.99. One thing that I was trying to talk about was the fact that also a lot of the banks, by the way, are engulfing today. So this is another thing that you should probably be looking at, because I think financials getting a nice break, and watch energy sector too could help overall markets in terms of like progressing today. So like these are just some alternative trades that I think are getting some better traction in case ES gets stuck. Kind of like BAC could also, BAC is more in an inside day, but it could get that odd to come back and retrace. Whereas City has just been non-stop continuation. I feel like no one even did the City swing trade for the 110 to 112 target, but it's getting pretty close. I took Apple today too, which we'll cover in a second. Where's the Apple chart? I don't know which template I have Apple on. This isn't the proper one, but it's fine. Okay, Apple also a potential outside scenario today too. When I took Apple long today at 11:04, it was mainly because I was watching ES right here, and I noticed that ES on a very small time frame had a bit of a bear flag that was forming. I don't know if you guys see this right here. Okay, and so I wanted to see, and that was such a big spot, and I was like, I highly doubt that they'll take this out before Fed, because at that point you're at too much risk of getting back to the 20s, and that's what could trigger the 70s and so on and so forth. So I figured this could be a period to try to negate, at least for 4 bars, 1, 2, 3, 4, and they did. So that kind of runs till 11:20, and this was a really nice negation period on ES. This is where we did the longs on ES off 68.3375 with 68.3375. By the way, this also closed above that point, and that was another reason why I decided to try the long off there and then the long on Apple. But why do you think that that was the case? And like you can kind of see, look at this 11:05, 11:07 continuation on Apple. This was really clean. Also made like a nice kind of cup and handle on this play. Plus, from a base structure, this is also a potential outside bar scenario today. So just in case you guys outside bar on Apple. Ooh. What's 68.3375? I just resent it in the Discord, but let's see how smart you guys are, or how much your memories retain information. Okay. What's 68, 85, 75? What's that area? Or even 68, 83? I want to teach you guys something, but you guys have to participate. Otherwise, I'm not going to show you guys it. If you guys don't participate, then there's no point. It's actually a very good core theory, but if no one's going to participate, then it's kind of pointless. Also, Poet just got triggered with some volume. David in the chat had shared this last week. I did a one-on-one session with him, and this one is a really nice 2-day flag break and a good clearance trade that we had, especially when it started clearing off 607, 610 yesterday. The condition for today was that it had to meet that 706, 710 area with odds of getting to 738. And this is on a 2-day continuation on this, but there's just some volume that came in. I shared the 7 or the 650 and $6 calls on Monday on this one because this did get some liquidity. I don't know if anyone took those. Did anyone take those calls? Nice, David. So, do you see how it hit that 710 today that we talked about yesterday? The 750s were getting volume today. I noticed that. But anyway, the 650s are hitting a range of like 75 cents. Those were 10 cents. That's a pretty good trade, and they did become fairly liquid in comparison, I guess, to how this would normally trade. Yeah, but your focus, David, isn't the push. Your focus is to replicate this on your own in the future, right? And to be able to spot that and trade it. This is a really nice 3-bar setup, especially off like a 11-month clearance. This is basically getting back to mid-supply is what this is doing. Do you see it? Oh, this is a clear trade. And I did a combo between like its prior annual flag range just to make sure that there's some median points in here. And it's just a really nice trade setup. This is where it cleared, basically, when it got back into that flag range where it sustained. So this can easily come back to $12, which is 100% move from that 580, 590. Even for a stock, that's actually a really good trade. So I took some comments on that. So no one wants to try looking at the core ratios that are aligned. What is 6883, you guys? Come on. If there's 40 people listening, at least one person should answer what 6883 is. Why would that be important this week? Or 688575? aside from like the base theory. That, yes, so that's the weekly session open for starters, right? 68, 85, 75 was Monday's real time session open. Okay, so that you guys, in case you guys forgot, that's where we opened in real time on Monday. Core ratios are aligned there. What does that even mean? What are core ratios? And I want you guys to start getting better at core ratios just because we've been trading around core areas recently. So, and I know they're not the standard 66, 34, whatever, okay, but this is probably more aligned with what they're doing, okay? So it's going to be a little bit more accurate. So what would that imply? How many points? Especially if we're working with like probably, so oops, sorry, I copied all of that. I should have just copied this. Okay, so if we're working with, we can just focus on like the mid-core ratios right now. Yes, okay, so like those are probably the ratios we're working with, and for the week, we could get the full range, okay? So from weekly open, okay, to weekly lows, we've hit 6830.75. That's 52 points. Okay, do you see what I was trying to explain to you guys on Monday? But no one was listening. That's why I'm like, and then someone in the chat today said like, oh, I was hoping we'd go to 68.18. I'm like, what? Why? Like, that doesn't even make any sense based on like the logic for this week. So if we're looking at this from, and these don't have to be exact, they're kind of just like within this 52 to 58 point range is usually just what I've noticed. Okay, we're kind of hitting around 54 points from that Monday real-time open from weekly range though. Okay, so this is now from like weekly highs to weekly lows, which the 90s wouldn't technically be like a core area. So at a minimum, from a core range, okay, you'd want to get back to like these areas here, 8.2, 8.4. Do you see what I'm saying? 8.6, 8.8. So from a core to core perspective, based on this core low, okay, do we have odds of getting back to the zone? And this is very important you guys understand this, because if they took this a bit lower, we might have been capped at 8.182. Do you see what I'm saying? If they took this down to 2.2, they might have capped us at 8.1. We could have maybe tested 8.1 and then stalled. This is so important that you guys understand this, because I think you guys need to get better at understanding core ranges. So something like this today, off lows, we have a decent odd of at least getting back to the zone. Do you see what I'm saying? Based on where they held. From an overall range, yes, they could come back and take out like the 64 points from these lows would take us back and take out this weekly high, because 63 points is not confined. That's not a confined area. What could this imply for wider ranges on the week? And this would make sense because they kept us in this area a lot. And we talked about this on Sunday with these areas having a lot of confluence. I feel like probably not this week. I feel like they're going to likely delay this unless we get that potential engulfing today, zone entry, and then get the move after the fact. Because remember I said that there's a chance that we could have a relatively flat Fed, and not necessarily flat in the sense that we don't move, but no new range on the week, okay? And it could just be more like small range, and it could be delayed until the 11th, especially since they have some odds like this on the 14-day, okay? Or some odds right here like within the 4-day, right? Or maybe like the 2-day, since this could engulf, but it has until tomorrow, okay? So like I would say like the first thing that we could watch for is honestly even just like 50% of this 2-day range to make it really, really easy for us this afternoon. And that would make total sense because 50% of the 2-day range is also going to be the 34 point break, okay? Do you see the alignment there? So I'm going to ask you guys one question, and you guys better not get this wrong, okay? What area is required for us to break this afternoon, specifically before 2 p.m., for us to have higher odds, okay, of capturing a full range break on the week, or at least a break back into the zone above 6888 and retesting weekly highs? We have... How much time do we have? We've got like 42 minutes. Oh my god. No! No. No, 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 no. You guys are not listening. Listen. 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 You guys don't listen. That's your issue. Stop jumping ahead. Okay? We're working with mid ranges. It seemed that way based on how we've been trading. It makes sense based on where they stalled before 1. Okay? What area would give us an odd of capturing that type of range this afternoon? You're just looking at it from a probability perspective. 6871 could be your target range, okay? Those could be your targets for today. 6871, 6881. Those are more pinnable areas into the close. Those aren't really areas that define odds though, okay? You guys misinterpret price targets or pinnable areas with odds, I guess, like which areas like can give you an odd. Do you know what I'm saying? Like you guys are, you don't know how to differentiate the two. Which area could give us a probability, okay, of capturing that for the week by tomorrow? We're not focused on just this afternoon. We're this point in the session should give us an idea of the kind of range we could get tomorrow and end of week. What area would that be? And it makes sense because it's midweek. Oh my god, you guys stop. Look at my screen. The answer's on the screen. It's right there. We just talked about it. Hello? Do you guys know what the question even is? Which area would we have to break, okay, before 2 to even give us a probability of extending or continuing on the week, specifically tomorrow, if they decide to just keep us pinnable today, this afternoon? Yeah, yes, the answer is right on the screen. I did that intentionally so you guys can see it. Okay, this could give us at least an odd. It's also a 34-point break from lows. Okay? This is also the 2-day range. Do you see what I'm saying? Okay, this runs till the 12th, meaning the final day on this is tomorrow. Yeah, it's more so though for like understanding and interpreting your odds. So like if this candle is from the 10th to the 12th, technically speaking, there's only 2 trading sessions for this, right? And they could also end up making this where, remember how I said if they want to keep this kind of pinnable, they can. Where like if they want to keep, and look at these structures are like off 6466. Okay, if they wanted to make this a little bit pinnable on the 4-day, they could, and that would just be like resetting these structures where it doesn't really do anything for us, but like it could give us those odds of resetting, but they're kind of just stuck between these areas here. Do you see what I'm saying? Like between the 7-3, 5-7, 6-3, 6-4, 6-6. And if all they want to do today is flatten us and just pin us to give us some better odds for tomorrow, then they might just end up taking us back, pinning us at 7-1, 8-1. Do you get what I'm saying? To then maybe set us up for a retest of like these areas tomorrow. Okay, so, and this is on the report. Like this exact scenario is on there. So this is in terms of odds. Which area though? You guys are not wrong about 7-1. You're just not understanding the question properly. That's more of like which area has to be met during this period to even give us an odd of continuing tomorrow if they were to keep us pinnable today, which so far that's kind of what it looks like they're doing. And we already figured that the 11th maybe had better odds than today, but obviously that's kind of relative to what they end up doing this afternoon. Okay, I'm gonna shut off the stream and I'll be back for 2. I would definitely watch here though, because if they start bringing this back into the channel before 1:30, then we're like at like a 90% chance, guys, of having a choppy Fed session or a flat session, kind of like what we talked about. And that could be one of those ones where like they take it up, down, and then just kind of leave it flat. And whether they want to leave it in the channel or back in the 50s or back at 6-4 or maybe give us the 7-1 like that, the odds of getting a 7-1, 8-1 pin start to reduce, where they could just kind of keep it flat for the week. Okay, I think sustaining over that 4-3, 4-4 becomes really important before Fed. Like we want to definitely try holding above these areas here. Do we still have some risk to the downside? Did they leave some room for us if they wanted to? Yes, right? So like there's definitely some room here, at least for the full zone, and there's definitely some overhead up here. Okay, should be pretty. You can just, I would just use like the 12-point ratios if you wanted, but, and they should like 12 to 13 points, but it seems like it's more aligned with this, but I feel like 13 points is likely very close to where overnight highs is. Yeah, it is. So that would make sense why they might be stalling here. And then from this perspective, kind of the same thing. So this is why I was saying like, oh, you definitely do not want to hit 68.18 that early, or especially like ahead of Fed, but and then off 68.33, it should be closer to like that 68.20. So you should be able to see the odds on both ends. And where they're sitting right now is kind of right in between. So like they've left an open window here. So if they leave it a little bit choppy, and I don't know if this helps you guys. I feel like sometimes doing this for you guys during these midpoints makes you guys trade these a lot better, but this is basically the range. Okay, so where we're trading here ahead of 2 o'clock, I think would give us an idea on the kind of price action we could, I know these are not zones, but these are what kind of price behaviors you could expect based on where they're trading in these areas. Okay, I'll leave you guys with that. So like if they're trading in this kind of range in here, then I would expect that to be a little bit more, oh sorry, hold on. I would expect that to be a little bit more bullish price action in this range here. Anywhere in here, which is the channel, would be choppy, neutral, flat, And then obviously anything in between here is going to trigger some wider range volatility. I know we had some odds of getting, you know, back to here, but I feel like they limited that based on how they're trading this afternoon. So far, the condition of 5-8 being met though ahead of 1 can definitely keep some odds in play. But I did notice that they stalled 5-7, 5-8 right at that 1 o'clock period. And if you notice, we haven't triggered over 5-8, 5-8.50 so far yet during this 1 o'clock period. Okay, which we already know is going to be the bigger overhead. And they did the same thing that they've been doing on the downside. There's like that 2 to 3 point break above those prior highs or prior lows. This would be a very important period, I think, for them to try to come back and retrace. So they're kind of just sitting right in between here. I feel like this isn't really, they're just leaving it a little bit stuck because they haven't, I feel like if they come back beneath 4.2, which would be like a neutral kind of range, and put it back at some risk, but if they keep it between 4.4, 5.2, 5.8, they still could have that odds in play for like the 6.4, 7.1. Do you see what I'm saying? Like these ranges in here. 7.3 retest. Okay, I'll be back in half an hour.